don't like it in here.
Hey, what's the matter with you?
Where did he go?
Wild. Put your soul into it. Wild. What's going on around here?
I was born a medium, but I had blocked it when I was a child. I came from a violent household, and things were just, I just tried to put that up, but I was never totally blocking it. So there was always someone talking to me. I just didn't know who that was. And, what was interesting is when I started doing the massage work, working with a chiropractor, as spirit works with us, when the student is ready, the teacher comes, and there was an elderly gentleman that came to get massage work. There was something about him that was so different. The white hair, the most crystal blue eyes I'd ever seen. So he's on the table and he's telling me he has this shoulder problem. And I said, okay, I can do blah, blah, blah. And he said to me, no, we're going to do something different today. And I thought, I'm the massage therapist. You're trying to tell me how to do this work. So it took a while for him to convince me that he wanted me to place my hand above the area and feel the energy. And finally, I stopped arguing with him. I'll humor this old guy, right? So I placed my hand above and I felt the discrepancy where the injury was. And he said, I want you to take your hand and move this energy around. And it was like it felt right, but I didn't know what I was doing. And then afterwards, I looked at him and I said, well, who are you? Where did you come from? And he just smiled at me and he goes, I'm just a traveler.
And welcome everybody to Haunting Live podcast this week. Thank you so much for being here. We greatly appreciate you guys tuning in each and every week to Haunting Live podcast, where we have a new guest to interview every week here in the paranormal field, a different person, different topic, as we do this week. But before we get to our guest this week, I want to thank everybody so much for tuning in and watching our episodes over the past little while. We really appreciate all the subscribes to our YouTube channel recently. We had noticed a lot of people checking out our new videos and things we posted, especially one of the recent videos that we just did. That is on Andrea Perron interview, and she is known for the Conjuring House, the original family that used to own the Conjuring House in the movie. We got to talk to one of the former family members of the home and interview her. Recommend that you guys go and check that out. It's right now on our YouTube channel. But before we get to today's guest, just want to introduce her. She is Jennifer. She's going to be joining us today to talk about a very important topic that I don't think is talked about a lot in the paranormal field. A lot of people tend to focus on different things like investigation work, mediumship, and stuff like that. But one thing that's not really talked about a lot is the other side of the normal grieving process when somebody passes. And that has a lot to do with what we do in this field. I think a lot of people don't focus on the natural things that happen when somebody passes away and the grieving process that one has to go through. It's fine to investigate. It's fine to do those cool things to try to communicate with the paranormal, communicate with spirit and energy work. But I think it's also important to deal with things like grieving and getting over that loss of a person or family member. And that's what we're going to be talking to about today. And Jennifer is an expert at that. So let's bring her on in today. Hello, Jennifer.
Hi, Trevor.
How are you doing?
You?
I'm great.
I'm good.
Thank you for being here. I really appreciate you coming on the show today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. I'm happy to be here.
It's wonderful to have you as a grief counselor, something we haven't talked a lot about on the show here. And I think it's something that's very important to talk about in this field of the paranormal, something that's not really discussed a lot. A lot of people tend to focus on things like mediumship, investigation work, and stuff like that to try to communicate with spirit. But I think one has to get over the grieving process when somebody does pass away. So can you tell us a little bit about how you got into the field of being a grief therapist?
Okay. I was born a medium, seeing spirit. It was nothing. It was something I always did. So I pretty much lived, I would say, a normal life. And I then went to school and became a licensed social worker. And I started working at the biggest hospital that we have here in Southern California. It's called General Hospital, LA County General Hospital. And there's a lot of trauma there. There's a lot of death there. And I just saw how huge the need is to have someone to work with people, to specialize and help people during the time of loss, and also to work with people who know they are dying, the flip side. So they know they're dying, and to be by their side. So that's something I've specialized in grief and trauma and loss for 18 years now. So I've worked in hospice, I've worked in palliative, just one-on-one individual therapy, big hospitals. And so, yeah, that's my passion. I run support groups. I've been running grief support groups for probably 18 years.
Was there something that connected you to that type of work in the first place? Was there something that happened in your childhood or as you were growing up that really connected you to, well, I want to help people get through the grieving process?
You know, since I've seen spirit my whole life, my earliest memories were at 2 or 3. I was seeing what I know now as spirit. At that time, I thought it was actually people. So I've always known there is no death. I've always known there's more than the physical body. Sure of it, 150% sure. So because I have that confidence, I thought I want to help people during that time, and maybe I'm not going to tell them my belief system, but maybe just me being there, being a witness, being there to provide comfort in any way that I can, maybe that can help them. But I think that's really which really called me to do end of life work as a therapist is my knowledge that there is no death.
Yeah, I think that's helped a lot of people as well get over things like a family member passing away, is getting into this field of the paranormal and being able to understand, yeah, there is no end to it. It's just a continuation. You're just moving on to the next step. So, how has that been for you then, going through the process yourself? Have you had to go through a grieving process, obviously, in your own life? What kind of experience did you have with that?
I've lost grandparents and uncles, and my first memory of a loss was my grandmother. And I remember that I was looking for her everywhere in the room. It was her funeral. Now I know I was 6 or 7, and I remember looking under the bed, looking in the closet because she was there. And at that time, I couldn't quite understand what was going on. Later, obviously, I was able to comprehend. But believe it or not, the biggest grief, the hardest grief I've ever had was when I lost the dog, my dog of 14 years. I'm a dog mom. I don't have biological children. I only have dogs. And I raised her since she was a puppy. And when I lost her, I was devastated. And I knew, wow, this is the grief that I've been helping people with. This is the level of grief that I know other people have. So I purposely used what I learned and what I've been using to help others on myself. And then I expanded. Okay, well, I'm also a medium. What else and so I combined everything I possibly could to help work through grief. And I say work through grief because I don't think there's ever an end to grief. I think you're always going to be grieving your loved one because we want them here with us. But there is a way to learn to live with the loss day by day. And that's something that I feel we can all do after we allow ourselves to really let it out, though. I think that's important, to really feel the grief.
So what kind of steps do you recommend people take then if something happens in their family? Like, say they do lose their parent or a grandparent. Is there one area that's more difficult for somebody to work through, or do you think it's all at the same level?
Grief is very personal. So what is intense grief for me may not be intense grief for someone else. And you never know. A person can intensely grieve someone who wasn't as close, but they're grieving the loss of what they wish had happened. For instance, maybe they have a parent who they didn't get to know as raise them, but then that parent passed, and then now they're grieving the loss of the what ifs and of what they wished. So it's all very personal. But what I recommend, no matter who you lose, is to feel it. And so every day for 30 minutes a day, I'm serious, put like a timer and just let it out, release it, feel it, look at pictures, purposely remember. And slowly but surely, that intensity can release if you do that. If you don't, what happens is it just gets like squished under deeper and deeper, and eventually it will come out like a volcano, so to speak.
Are there dangers then to keeping those kind of feelings and emotions bottled up? Like, can those erupt into different kinds of happenings or outbursts or something if somebody does not let those out?
Yeah, there is. You could reach a point where someone can't even get out of bed or can't function at work. Anxiety becomes very high, panic attacks, depression. All sorts of things can come out of grief that is not expressed. Physical ailments, because our bodies hold on to everything we feel. So our bodies can start to feel more stress and have more ailments just from a grief. Grief is the hardest thing I truly believe that any of us will ever experience, because it's out of our control. Number one, there's nothing we can do to bring them back. There's nothing. And number two, it's your heart, it's your love. It's there's losses and then there's loss. And so that's what grief is, and it's just not talked about enough in society nowadays. When you're at work, you're given 3 days off, or maybe 5 days if they live far away. You cannot process grief in 5 days. You're still in shock. So, yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with that as well. Like, when you are working and stuff and they do give you time off because a close family member passes, I do believe it's 3 days, you're right, to only go through that process. That's got to be difficult on anybody. Like, never mind if it's your grandmother or if it's a closer member like a mother or father that passes away. Like, how are you supposed to get over that or grieve through that process in just a couple of days? I think they understand that's impossible, but like, it's going to take a lot more than that. So are there steps that you recommend people go through? Do you have some kind of a guidance of like step process that you recommend people go through, like from the start to helping them get over things? Like, when something does happen, do you say, okay, this is step number 1, this is step number 2 that you can try? Do you have a formula for people, or?
Well, I try. I mean, everything doesn't necessarily work for everyone, but I will say start off with the 30 minutes a day grieving. So that's what I say, number 1. Number 2, I teach people to meditate, because when you meditate, you connect with your highest self. You can really start to feel that wisdom. And as you connect with your soul, then you start to understand how infinite you are. And then through that, believe it or not, then there's a connection to your loved ones. When you can feel that you will never die, and then you start to feel that connection with everyone else. But there's no shortcut to grief in the sense that it's going to hurt. And so I do recommend like support groups. It's beneficial to be around peers who are experiencing something similar. So if there's like child loss, I always prefer that people go to support groups where people lost other children. Spouses, it's nice to be around other spouses. There's something like peer support. It's also releasing grief from the physical body, because our bodies hold on to everything. So meditation, yoga, and there's certain therapies such as EMDR that help to literally release that blocked trauma from our bodies.
So would you say something like then it's better for people to be in the familiar, be surrounded by things that they know and that comfort them during the time. I know it's good to have that. That's something that's just natural. But is it sort of from your point of view as a therapist, to recommend things to be more comfortable, to be more familiar to somebody that has had something happen to them?
I think so. I think that, well, you mean familiar meaning location or people?
More like a people or object, or even being around something that is familiar to them rather than being traveling or doing something. Well, maybe that's something for therapy as well. Maybe that person prefers to be out and about doing what's normal for them. But I mean, what do you recommend? It's better to be surrounded by familiar things when somebody passes away?
So I always recommend that people do not do anything extreme for 1 year, no major changes for at least 1 year. So that means if you don't have to move, unless some people financially have to move if they lose a spouse and then things change financially, but try not to move, try not to change a job, try not to do, as far as their loved ones' clothing and stuff. I say try not to do anything major even then, because a few things. Number one, our loved ones' clothing or their shoes or their pillows, whatever, that's physical, and we can hold on to that, and we can connect with them energetically, because their energy is on the clothing, and it really does comfort people. And also, of course, you're going to have those memories of seeing them in that shirt or holding on to their jewelry. So I always say, don't do anything major for a year. Once it's been a year and you process a lot of your grief, then you can make a better decision on what changes you want to make in your life, and which ones you want to keep. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's a good advice, I think, is to have things sort of calm down, lay low, and not do anything too stressful until you're sure you can handle it. Because, like you said, you can get into things like panic attacks and stuff if you stress out too much about it, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So, how do you do this then day to day for your clients then as a therapist? Like, what do people come to you with that they need to see you for as a grieving person? Like, is there some kind of, what's the most common thing that people come and see you for as a grief counselor?
Usually it's not just one grief. It's we have the older we get, we lose more people we love, or more pets, or there's also loss of dreams, loss of jobs, loss of homes, relationships. So they all pile together. So when a person comes to see me, maybe just for initially, it's like, I lost my mother, so I'm going to see her for therapy. We don't just work on that, because all the losses pile up, and it actually does. It hurts the heart. It affects your nervous system. Is really what it does. We have nervous systems, and every time there's trauma, whether it be from a loss of a loved one or a loss of something else, our nervous system becomes unbalanced. And that's where we're more prone to have anxiety and depression and health issues.
Yeah, so it's good to help them with everything that is coming to them at once, right? So they may think it's one thing that they're focusing on, but are you able to pick up on other things when they come in? So, say you're linking the mediumship abilities with your therapy abilities. So, are you able to sense if they're having other issues besides that one thing that they came in for?
Well, I don't, as a therapist, I don't combine mediumship. I just work as a therapist, but I let people know that I'm an intuitive, I'm an energy worker. So I obviously am highly intuitive, but I always ask people for a history. I will ask them. But, and sometimes people don't tell me everything at first because they don't remember, or just because it's too personal. But eventually, my intuition will guide us. I will ask the right question, and eventually, the person will go there. It takes trust if you think about it. When you first meet someone, to tell someone your deepest, darkest secrets and your saddest times. So I understand that at first, when someone first meets me, it's going to be on one level, but eventually we'll get there. So it's a relationship.
How do
So
you,
that's really
yeah,
more what I do.
yeah, sorry, how do you deal with that day to day with clients? And if there, is it like a process? Do you have to work with them like more often to get their trust to make them open up? And do you have like a certain level that you work on at the first, or like do you start at one level, then kind of build it up from there? Or
It just depends. It's always at first I say, why are you here? Why did you come to therapy? What brings you here? And like I said, it's one thing, but it could be multiple things. And then we get the history, and then I say, okay, what do you want to work on first? And we just talk about it, and it just kind of like is like a book opening up. And so one chapter, then the other, and it does take, I think, like practice or finesse from my part to not be interrogating, but more like it's definitely led by the person who comes. So if you're my client, you're going to lead the therapy. I'm just kind of the guide.
yeah, do you find that your guides work a lot with you as well? Do you have guides that help you out when you do that kind of work?
Oh, I have so many guides. Um, I think it's my soul's intuition. I just, because I'm working with them and I'm trying to help them, I'm merged with them. My soul is merged with them. And so I will know things that maybe they're not ready yet to tell me, but then I'll wait till they're ready. I'm an empath, so I can feel what they're feeling when I connect with people. So yeah, so it's hard for me. That's hard for me to turn on and off when I'm working as far as my empathy and my soul kind of telling me what. As far as guides, usually my guides are more for the mediumship. I think they work with me more mediumship wise. For as a therapist, it's my soul telling me what's going on.
So I wanted to ask you one question as well. I think we talked about it off the air there, but when people are in this field, in the paranormal, they tend to reach out to people that may have passed in their recent life. Say a family member passed away, and they're using the paranormal as a tool to try to reach back to them. But they haven't gone through that actual grieving process yet in the real world. So, what do you sort of have you ever had clients come to you that have said anything like that? Like, have they asked you, what can I do to communicate with a family member? And do you often expect that family member that they're seeking to come through, or do you get somebody else?
I've had clients in therapy and also mediumship clients both ask me, like, what can I do to connect with my loved ones? Um, and what I always tell them is, at first you may not pick up on anything because the grief is so intense. It's vibration, right? So if I'm feeling really angry and sad right now, I probably am not going to be the best medium or psychic because my vibration. So I tell them that as well, that it does take time. Um, but it doesn't mean your loved ones aren't there for you the second they cross over and visiting and telling you. So I teach people to kind of meditate, sit still. Also to breath work. I'm a yoga instructor as well, so I teach people breath work that helps a person calm down. And then I tell them, in your mind, call out to your loved one and say, come close to me, and there's a good chance at that point you may feel their essence. You may not see them, or maybe you'll see them in your mind's eye. You may smell them, or you may hear them. Um, so that's one of the things I also teach people is that your loved ones are going to come visit you through signs as well, whether it be birds or butterflies or a certain color or a certain song. Tell them, give me a sign, and they're trying, and they are, and it's just a matter of you being perceptive enough to notice.
Is there something you do with your work as a medium to help them through that, to kind of show them the way that they can see signs from a loved one? Is there anything that you can do to help with that?
Well, when I do a reading for people, I often spirit will often tell me I come to them as a bird, or I come to them as in the stars when they connect to look. So, and then I'll tell them. So know that every time you're outside at night looking at the stars, your mom steps through, and they'll say, "Oh yeah, I felt her," that kind of thing. So spirit will tell me directly how they come through in science. The I wish I could say there's one. Oh, dreams. Dreams is a way that I often tell people that person you could connect with your loved ones, and just before you go to sleep, intention. Like I'm going to dream of my loved one. And I'm going to remember. I'm going to dream of my loved one. I'm going to remember. And then put a paper and a pen by your bedside, because the second you wake up, write it down if you remember, if you can. That's one way that our loved ones can visit us, because we're on the same. We leave our bodies and we go to the astral plane, which is where they visit, and so we can really connect with them there.
Yeah, a lot of the higher energy work does happen when you dream, or even when you're just about to enter REM sleep. That's when a lot of your brain activity kind of links in with the spirit world. So is that when a lot of messages come through, do you find, for people? Or is it more when you're entering deep sleep that you get more messages?
It could be both. When people are about to fall asleep, deep sleep, or about to wake up, that's when I've had people tell me, "Oh, I felt my husband, by my side. I was half awake, half asleep. What do you think that is?" I'm like, "Oh, that was him." I also teach people it's not your imagination. It's not your imagination. It's real. And pay attention to the goosebumps that you get, or the hair on the top of your head going up. That's when spirit's around you. So I do teach people, usually it's my mediumship clients. No, that's when they're visiting you.
Yeah, so true. I think that's a great way to do it, and I think it would help a lot of people out to know that that is real. That's really what's happening. So hopefully that will also help them get over things as they go through the process, right?
Yeah, it's just one of those things you have to go through, grief.
So have you had any really interesting stories that you can share with us about maybe a client that's come to you about somebody that has passed away and they were having trouble getting through the process? Is there something that you can share with us about maybe one of your clients that was really interesting?
So they had trouble with the process
Of going through the grief process that maybe
okay.
you can share with us?
Well, I do remember I had a client whose husband passed, and of course she was grieving. And I was giving her bereavement counseling, and she would start to say, "Yeah, I don't know if I'm crazy or not." And she didn't know I was a medium. "I don't know if I'm crazy or not, but sometimes I hear footsteps." She lived alone at this point in the house. I hear footsteps, and I'm like, "Okay, where were the footsteps?" And it would happen to be right where her husband, when he'd come home, the direction that he would, he'd walk from the front door. Or so what I do at that point is I validate that their experiences are real. So rather than say, "Oh, it's just your imagination," or just completely ignore what they say, because when someone says it, they're kind of throwing it out there tentatively and seeing what my reaction is. And so because I'm like, "Well, what do you think?" And so, because again, as a therapist, it's not about me, it's about the person. It's a role that's very different than like a coach or any other role. It's always about the client. It's not what I guide them back to, "What do you think?" But I know a lot of people were able to feel validated after. So that was one example that she thought she was crazy, and no, it obviously was her husband visiting her.
Do you find that when they tell you stories like that, that it's confirming for you as well that, you're on the right track with them, you're helping them out, and they're on their way to feeling over the process?
Yes, definitely. It definitely makes me feel like I'm the right track, and so excited to be able to help people know that this is real, that it's real, that their loved ones, because their loved ones are on the other side, like shouting or doing everything they can to make noise and feel me, hear me. Really, that's how it is. As a medium, when I connect, they're so happy to have a voice. Um, so, your loved ones are really like, "Hear me, feel me, see me." And so I want people to know that just as much as you miss them, they don't miss you in the sense that they're able to be with you, but you're not able to acknowledge them or communicate to them. So that's frustrating on their part. They want this communication just as much as you do.
I want to talk for a second now about beliefs and different types of belief systems within the grieving process. How do you deal with people that have maybe a different religious view on things, or maybe a different background in their family beliefs on what to do after somebody passes away? Like, do you help them with that end of things as well, or?
So I always ask people, what is their belief system? What is their religious or spiritual belief system? And whatever they tell me, I go with that. And so I've had clients who will tell me that they believe nothing, like once you die, that's it, nothing. There's no more, there's no infinite life. It's over. And so for me, that's the end of my. I'm not going to do anything else to try to change their mind. I'm going to respect, because as a therapist, I have to respect that, and I do. I respect their beliefs. I only go further if the person tells me, "Oh, I believe there's something else," and then they give me, like I told you, like, but and I heard this. But what does happen a lot of the times is people who had no belief system that there's life will get enough signs from their loved ones. They start to question, like, hey, maybe there is life after death. Or they start to explore other religious or spiritual beliefs that do confirm that. And I don't think that's a coincidence. I truly believe that's their loved ones wanting them to feel their presence.
Do you get that sometimes with clients that they'll almost switch sides, so to speak, if they're total non-believer, even in the paranormal, they might switch to sort of starting to explore it a little bit?
I do. I have. And one of the things they'll tell me is like, not everyone knows this, but I do believe, or the experiences that they experience, the paranormal experiences, not everyone knows about it because they're kind of still embarrassed or think they're going to be laughed at. So, but they believe now, or they're open to belief. So,
well, sometimes it takes
and I will recommend books often.
Yeah.
I'll often say, well, why don't you read this book? What do you think about that? And then that's kind of just to see, help their minds kind of see there's other possibilities.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, sometimes it takes like a traumatic event in somebody's life to make them see different ways of doing things, right? So they might be so brought up, or so when they've been growing up in their family life or their professional life as well, that they're so one-sided or they're so blinded they can't see anything else besides what they've been taught. So sometimes it does take something traumatic for them to open their eyes and see, well, maybe there is something else out there.
Absolutely.
So what's been one of the biggest changes in your life since you started doing grief counseling along with mediumship? What has changed in your life and the better for you?
Well, I just have such a joy for what I do as far as proving that there is no death and helping people who believe that even people who know there is no death, you're still going to grieve. But I think just helping people who are hurting, losing the loss of their loved one. I feel a lot of joy in helping in the healing process and facilitating that. And whether I'm doing mediumship or as a therapist.
Yeah, no, that goes hand in hand. That's why I was so interested in having you here today and talk about the grieving process and how you help people through that in connection with being a medium, because those go both hand in hand. But at the top of the show, I was saying, like, I don't think those things are talked about enough in the paranormal in this field. Like, people focus on communication, they focus on mediumship, but they do not focus a lot on talking about the grieving process and what they're going through when they lose somebody or a loved one. So I think that's very important to start talking about more in this field.
Right. Trying to find meaning, right? That's what people are doing. They're trying to find meaning in the loss.
And do you find that your clients actually come out with more meaningful realization about what happened?
I think after allowing themselves to process the pain and the anger and the sadness and all those emotions, that eventually they find meaning in their loss. I would say yes.
Yeah, and I think that's the most important part, is getting through it in a way that they can handle, right? It's all about, like you said as well, it's a personal thing, so it's about doing what's right for that individual. So Before we let you go, I do want to talk a little bit about some other things that you do besides the mediumship and counseling. You're also a pet medium as well. So how did you start working in the pet field? Like, how did you start communicating with animals?
Well, when my beloved dog Angel passed over, I missed her so much. I told her, we need to work together. So you on the other side, me here, let's bring through pets and like let's bring them through in detail. And because when I used to walk her, always lost dogs would come to us. I felt like she was always like a helper. So we do that now. And so it's actually taken, she passed in late 2018. It's taken years for us to be able to really work together, but we're doing it. We bring through loved ones, pets, and not just, oh, you have a dog in spirit. No, details that you will know without a doubt that your dog or whoever, force, whatever, how they felt, what they're doing, and fond memories, just as if they're a person, because the soul is intelligent, whether it's an animal soul or a human soul. So that's really what it comes down to.
No, definitely. I think that's great. We've had a few animal communicators on our show here in the past, so I thought it was really cool that you have that ability as well to talk to pets that have passed also. So you're helping.
Just the lost ones. I don't do live animals. I just do ones in spirit.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. So what type of messages do you get from the animals that have passed? Like, is it ones that have missed their owners, or do they have something else they want to talk about, or?
They'll usually say thank you. If there's any guilt, just like in the human. So if the sitter had some guilt about their passing, whether it be, oh, I had to put him or her down, or did I do enough? The animal will come through. You did everything. I love you, and I used to love when we did this, and their energy is so high. That's why my voice even changes as I just think about. I mean, they're just so pure love animals. They're not the same as humans. They vibrate much higher. And so they're coming for healing as well. They help heal their hearts of their parents here.
So another thing too, before we let you go today, you were telling me you have started doing a bit of artistry, some spirit drawings. Do you want to share a little bit about that before we let you go today?
Sure. So I'm not an artist, but a year ago I had a vision. I was doing spirit art. And so 6 months ago, I started drawing for spirit. So what that means is that somehow, in addition to the mediumship readings that I give, I'm drawing people's loved ones. And it could be their grandparents, but it could be any age. So sometimes they're recognized, sometimes they're not. But it definitely is an amazement, and I'm in awe of this because I've only been doing this 6 months. And if you knew me well, you knew I'm not an artist. And I also could draw people's spirit guides and angels. I've been giving spirit guides and angel readings my whole life. That's something I've always done. But now I'm drawing their guides as well and giving messages.
That's really cool because if somebody comes in for counseling, they can also do that with you and have a little confirmation of who they're talking to. So
for the mediumship reading or psychic reading,
yes,
therapy,
yeah, exactly. So, do you have anything else you'd like to talk about before we end the show today?
I did write a book for grief. So those of you who are grieving, I combine my knowledge as a therapist, as a medium, and as a yoga instructor to help people. And I do a 12-step. There's a 12-step process that I talk about to help people through grief. And it's called Deathless, A Guide Through Grief.
Cool. And where can they get that? Through you, or do they have to go online?
Amazon and barnesandnoble.com. So it's on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. Here it is.
Great. So we highly recommend that anybody watching can go check that out if they're interested, and we'll put the link in the description as well for anybody that wants to go check out your book as well. So thank you, Jennifer, so much for coming on the show today. It's been so wonderful to talk about this topic because, like I've said in the top of the show here, like it's something that I don't feel is talked about a lot in this field. But I really feel a strong connection that it should be, and it should be brought forward a lot more as a connection to the paranormal field. Like a lot of people try to do mediumship as a connection to spirit, But it's really important to talk about that grieving process as well if you have lost somebody that's close to you that you want to communicate with. So once you start grieving, you can properly communicate, I think, with that person. So yeah. Well, thank you. No, thank you so much for taking time today, for being here on Haunting Live. I really appreciate it, and it was wonderful having you as a guest, and definitely have to have you back on to talk about some more stuff someday. So
Trevor.
Thank you so much. And that was Jennifer joining us today on Haunting Live podcast, talking about a sensitive topic, something that we haven't had on the show here really before, and something I wanted to talk about with a specialist like her, and that is grief and dealing with death. And so something that does happen in everybody's life is something that we cannot escape ourselves either. So it's really important that we be able to talk about that, especially in this field of the paranormal, and being open about that type of topic. Not just paranormal is not just about communicating with spirit. It's not just about investigating. It's about dealing with grieving process as well, especially if you have lost somebody that has been close to you. So thank you so much for everybody tuning in today. I hope you enjoyed our topic today. And thank you again to Jennifer for joining us. She is a grief therapist. She does a lot of other things as well, such as being an intuitive and a medium. She does pet communication as well, ones that have passed. So thank her for being on, and it was wonderful to talk to her about this topic today here on Haunting Live podcast. But thank you guys so much for tuning in today. We really appreciate you guys subscribing to our channel. We've had a lot of people subscribing lately, so that's wonderful. We have passed our goal of 500 subscribers, which is wonderful, and we do have a contest open right now. If you go onto our Facebook page, there is a post there. You guys can check out our contest that we have running up until the end of this month. If you guys subscribe to our channel, leave a comment on the post that is on our Facebook for the contest, we will pick a winner on the end of this month and give you guys a prize out of our merch store here at Haunted Live Podcast, where we carry a bunch of different things in the paranormal field, such as smudging materials, crystals, and things for protection, and things like that here on Haunted Live Podcast is what we will give you guys as a prize. So go check out that contest, and of course, don't forget to head on to our website, our official website, which is HauntingLivePodcast.com, where we have all of our past shows listed. You can listen to them directly there, or you can listen to them on your favorite podcast app as well if you miss a live show here every Sunday with a brand new paranormal guest in the paranormal field. Thank you guys so much for being here this week. Really appreciate you guys checking us out this week, and we'll be back next week with a brand new guest. So thank you guys so much. Take care, and we'll see you back here on Haunted Live Podcast.
And began working with healing of the land, and because it felt like such a massive project, started teaching everyone who wanted to learn.
From childhood, I would see spirits, and I just felt like they were the extra people in my home. I had a hard time like sharing that. I grew up in the Bible Belt in South Carolina, and it's just not cool, or it's frowned upon. It's demonic or woo, scary.
I've always been a spooky kid. I love everything paranormal. I don't have a memory where I didn't believe in magic and the paranormal.
I use my intuitive abilities to help people identify their inner self. So have a deeper self-awareness. And through that, I'm able to help them see different perceptions and different belief systems that might be preventing them, exploring their journey.